All right, let's talk about a number most of us have seen on a doctor's chart, your body mass index, or BMI. It's this simple little score that's supposed to tell a huge story about our health. But what story is it really telling? And more importantly, is it even the right one? Today, we're going to break it all down.
So you go to the doctor, they take your height and weight, and you get this number. Maybe you're told you're in the overweight category. And that's kind of it. The conversation just stops there. But should it? Is that one score really the final word on your health? That's the big question we're digging into.
So here's how we're going to tackle this. First, we'll do a quick refresher on what BMI actually is. Then, we'll look at those standard categories we all know. After that, we pull back the curtain on its biggest flaws. We'll get into why the scale isn't one size fits all. And finally, we'll talk about what we should be looking at instead.
All right, so to kick things off, let's just make sure we're all on the same page about what BMI is and where it comes from.
At its heart, BMI is just a simple math problem using your height and your weight. Doctors and researchers use it as a quick screening tool, a way to estimate your body fat and get a rough idea about your risk for certain health issues. And you got to hear that word, estimate. That's the key.
So once that number is calculated, you get placed into one of a few categories. This is the part of the system that most of us are pretty familiar with. And here they are. You've got underweight for anything below 18.5, then the moderate weight range up to about 25, and then you get into overweight and obesity. On the surface, it all looks pretty neat and tidy, right?
Well, this is where that neat and tidy story starts to fall apart. See, the thing that makes BMI so popular, how simple it is also its greatest weakness. It's time to talk about the hidden flaws.
Because that one number, that one simple calculation, completely leaves out the reality of what a human body is actually made of.
Okay, here's the fundamental issue. BMI is just not a very good indicator of your actual body fat. It's a proxy, a guess. It has no idea if it's looking at a pound of dense muscle or a pound of fluffy fat. And it totally ignores where on your body that fat is stored, which, it turns out, is a critical piece of the health puzzle.
And this right here is where that flaw becomes crystal clear. You could have an Olympic athlete, someone with tons of muscle and very little body fat, and they could easily have a BMI that lands them in the overweight category. Meanwhile, a person who sits at a desk all day with less muscle and more body fat could have the exact same score. The number's the same, but are their health profiles? Not even close.
And the problems don't stop with just muscle versus fat. The categories themselves, those cutoff points we just looked at, have a huge issue. They weren't really designed for everybody.
This gets right to the history of it all. The data that was used to create these supposedly universal BMI categories came mostly from studies of white people. The problem with that? Well, we know now that how our bodies are composed and where we store fat can be very, very different across various racial and ethnic groups.
And this has some serious real-world consequences. For example, research has shown that people in the Asia-Pacific region can start facing higher risks for things like diabetes at a BMI well below the standard overweight cutoff of 25. The numbers are telling a completely different story for them.
I mean, just look at this comparison from the World Health Organization. The standard chart says overweight starts at a BMI of 25, but for Asia-Pacific populations, the recommended cutoff is 23. That means a person with a BMI of 24 might be told they're at a moderate weight by one standard, but they could already be considered at risk by another. So how can one number mean two totally different things?
So after all this, you might be thinking, okay, so is BMI just junk? It's flawed, it's not universal, so what do we do? Well, it's not about just throwing the tool away. It's about understanding where it fits in the toolbox.
The best way to think about BMI is as a starting point. It's a very basic screening tool. It can be a good conversation starter with your doctor or a way to look at health trends across a huge population. But it should never be the only thing you look at, and it is definitely not the final word on your personal health. To get a real, complete picture, healthcare professionals use other tools. Things like your waist-to-hip ratio give a much better idea of fat distribution. Even better are direct body fat measurements. But, maybe the most important tool of all is simply having a real conversation.
And that's really the bottom line here. Your health is just way too complex and nuanced to be boiled down to a single number. For a true, personalized picture of your health, the absolute best thing you can do is talk with a professional who can look at the whole you, from different metrics to your lifestyle.
And that kind of leaves us with one last thought, doesn't it? In this age of personalized medicine, where we understand just how complex the human body is, maybe the real question we should be asking is
Isn't it time we moved past a single number to define something as incredibly personal as our own health?